Hello, dear friends. We are sincerely happy to welcome you again. And today we're going to talk to these teams Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, in our previous conversation, we said that we people are faced with a task on the solution of which not only people's fate depends, but their lives as well. And you said that yes, there are many unknowns in this task, but it is still possible to solve it because there is no point in setting a task for humanity that has no solution. You made an important emphasis that we can solve this task together in unity. And you gave an interesting example that if, for example, we imagine that our friends, our scientists, have found a solution that will enable us not only to slow down climate change, but also to stop it altogether, then another question arises, a moral and ethical one. Do we have a right to use these technologies and to apply them without getting approval from all the people on the planet? You know, some questions have appeared in this regard, and I would like to discuss them with you today because some of our friends think, what questions can there be at all? Of course, if there is a solution, we should certainly apply it. After all, it is for the good. The motive is good and sincere to care for people in order to save lives, so that somehow humanity can survive. And of course, this is moral and ethical. Therefore, it seems to me that there is some misunderstanding, first of all, about the risks of all this. And the second question is, why in this case should the decision be made by all of us together and not made for us, as it is usually done in the consumerist format, and it is more habitual for us when someone makes a decision for us? Those are the two main questions.
I agree. It is much more habitual for us when someone decides something for us
Right.
in a way favorable to us. And our friend's misunderstanding is understandable. Indeed, if it has turned out that someone can save us, how can we be not saved, right? Well, first of all, friends, in the previous video, we made a purely hypothetical assumption that our scientists had already solved this problem and managed to protect our planet from external cosmic influence. That is the first point. Because many people immediately hoped that this had already happened and we can relax. No, friends. Unfortunately, it's too early for us to relax. Why? Because the issue is too serious. If we are going to discuss this topic, I think we should go into it more deeply so that our friends understand what we are really facing and what the situation is today. Let us try to clarify this. In the world today, there are no more than 200 scientists who understand at least a little bit and who are really immersed more than others in the problems of matter interaction at the quantum level. There are about 24 scientists who are friends with us and who are working on this problem on a voluntary basis. Yes, these are the smartest people on this planet, but they are only 10% of all the others. So let's take a closer look from this perspective. Imagine that not 200 people, but only a few dozen, about 20, we will not specify, are engaged in this problem. This means that their capabilities are drastically reduced by a whole order of magnitude. Moreover, under what conditions do they work? I explain on a voluntary basis and with the available support of other volunteers. Sorry, we live in a material world where money has replaced God, and the opportunities we have, directly or indirectly, still depend on funds. Isn't it true? It is. Nobody funds us. We're self-funded. That is, what you and I have earned, friends, and what we can allocate in general to the promotion of the idea itself, to the financing of science and everything else, is what we have been able to earn and allocate, taking it away from our own families and depriving ourselves of some purchase of acquiring something new. And these meager possibilities are actually not even meager. They are available, at least of some kind. And based on all of this, without having direct access to all the scientific basis, to all the sources of operational information, to those very sensors, to real data that have not been subsequently modified, as well as to many other things that are necessary. And today we have a problem in general, meaning we can't conduct the experiments that are really necessary. Why? Because someone has regarded Allat as an enemy. So now, we don't even have what we had a few months ago. Hence, our capabilities have been reduced even more. Plus, we no longer have a huge number of volunteers who helped. Those were very active, good, and wonderful people. And they actually helped to find different information, which is also very important. It seems that it's no big deal. No, friends, it is a big deal. Even historical data is a big deal. Again, just imagine humanity has been studying treatises and observing the climate for many years, for centuries, even though in a purely philosophical form. There were all kinds of speculations by various scientists, including some lesser-known ones, but their ideas were very far-reaching and very important for today. And so a huge number of volunteers who were also involved in that can't do it now. Why? Because as it turns out, we've become toxic because someone wanted it that way. And we've been deprived of a huge number of helpers. Great, isn't it? And in this difficult, uncertain time, our scientists, even if they would make such a breakthrough, I do not eliminate such a possibility because our knowledge is actually ahead of the rest of the world. As Dr. Egon Chalakian said, by about 10 years. To be honest, I doubt that it is 10 years. With the current course of science and its development, it's much more than 10 years. Anyway, let's not argue about this. It's secondary. But let's allow such a possibility that our scientists made a breakthrough under all these voluntary conditions and created something that can protect our planet from external cosmic influence. But now, let's look at this from another perspective. After all, we did not have such vast opportunities to analyze and study, including how our planet would behave and how our climate would behave. I'll give you a simple example on breath holding, for instance, or a person scuba diving to a sufficient depth, for instance, 70 to 100 meters, and a person, after being underwater for some time at this depth, rapidly surfaces. It would seem that he surfaces into the air. Everything should be fine. But if he surfaces rapidly, he will have problems. Why? Due to nitrogen. His blood will start boiling. Meanwhile, this can lead to paralysis because the blood vessels burst when nitrogen is boiling in the blood. And this can be fatal. Such a thing did happen, and more than once. So here's a simple example. We strive to save the world. But we might overlook something because we tritely lack intelligent, sufficiently educated people who could analyze the issue from all sides and have access and opportunities to solve this task. However, the situation is acute. The world is going down into cataclysms. And it is clear that if we do not act timely, we will all die. It would seem that we will die either way. Yet, in the second scenario, there's at least some hope. But there's a lot we haven't considered. Tell me, would that be right or wrong? On the one hand, it is right, isn't it?
But on the other hand, yes.
After all, we save the world, we save our children, we save the future. But if there's at least something we haven't taken into account, how will that affect us? Even if we switch off a kettle that is boiling, it still keeps boiling, isn't that so? Inertia. The changes that have already happened will actually take a lot of lives. However, if we miss at least something, if we are not smart enough, if we fail to calculate something and do something a little bit differently than we should have done, people will suffer. Does it mean we will be murderers? On the one hand, people would have died anyway. Yes, they would have died. A bit later, and not at our hands. While in this case, it is us who provoked it. Is that the right thing to do? A simple example. You will say, it's wrong. I also think this is wrong. But if we don't have any other opportunity, and we can stop this, if we don't do that, would that be right? Look at the situation we are in, right? In fact, it's a really acute and interesting situation, and how to make a decision in it. But that's just one of the questions. However, considering the fact that, yes, today, I agree, climate is already being discussed quite seriously. And in many areas, in some regions, certain centers for counteracting the climate already start being established in many countries. In some countries, even at the national level, officials have started saying that we need to unite and take some countermeasures. Discussion is going on. But how long will they keep talking? That is also a good question. Let's recall the example of Professor Chalakian's model that he proposed. What is the problem with it? In fact, the problem is that he appealed to three leaders who are, let's say, the pivot or the backbone of the entire world. Yes, these are three huge countries, and it would seem that everything should be resolved if they say, yes, but now imagine some country with nuclear weapons, with huge capacities, says, guys, we don't want that. And that's all? Science comes to a halt too? And the entire world finds itself in the same situation we're in now. Well, in better conditions, of course. There's funding, access to most of the territories, and so on. Plus taking into account that there are three countries, and at any rate, unlike us, scientists will have access to the country from which we were kicked out. But what about the rest of the countries? Could that happen? It could. And now let's look at it from yet another perspective. In fact, nothing changes. The consumerist format remains as it is now. Tell me, how long will it take for these three countries to agree on who will invest what percentage of GDP in the development of science? Who will provide which scientific basis and which scientists? How many years will it take? Will they be able to reach an agreement quickly? A simple question. I don't think they will succeed. It will take a lot of time. Yet, this time is the time when we humans are being mercilessly destroyed by the Cerberus. So, is it their fault or ours? Whose fault is it that people are dying? And the further it goes, we see that the situation gets worse. Everything advances and escalates, while many are asleep and fail to see. Tell me, is that right or wrong? It's a problem, isn't it? So we come up to the question, is it moral or immoral? If we have technical capabilities, we have the knowledge, and we've created a solution, will we be able to apply it, or is it wrong if we apply it on our own against the will of the rest of humanity? Even trivially from a moral point of view. Although, I would also say that we need to take into account that even if we create some kind of a shield for our planet, the question is, how will our planet affect other planets in our solar system, where we have a pronounced gravitational interaction? Meanwhile, the exchange of information is really profound and serious if we go to the level of even quantum interactions. After all, those planets will be unprotected. Or should we protect the entire sphere? Or what should we do? In fact, humanity has no capacity to protect the entire sphere. It's unrealistic. We don't have that kind of energy, and we don't have such a capability. We can only talk about a shield on our planet, but it's extremely difficult to calculate everything. Okay, that's a technical issue. While we have started talking about the ethical side, let's take an example of what you, friends, and we face every day, and many of us will confirm this. A simple example. We all have neighbors, friends, or acquaintances. It doesn't matter. Let there be a neighbor with whom we have frequent conversations about climate change. We try to convey and tell him that the climate problem is growing and something needs to be done. He listens, nods, and seems to understand it, yet he doesn't take an active part. He seems to hear us, but sometimes he tries to pass us by when we are standing near the house. He goes to the other side of the street, as if to show that he's already bored with our talking. However, he has little kids, and we have little kids too, and we perfectly understand that if people do not support this project, it will not be implemented. If it is not implemented, then there will be no protection. And since there is no protection, there will be a threat to the children of our neighbors, and our children too. So, inaction is akin to killing children, and this is wrong. Plus, we ourselves want to live. You have to agree, after all, just to go ahead and die because the neighbor doesn't want to hear or doesn't want to understand. Well, this is somehow unfair, so we try to get through to him. We try to tell him. We show him graphs and tell him about what is happening. We send messages about the climate catastrophes that have occurred to date so that he becomes convinced and understands. However, in the meantime, he is actively engaged with his children. He buys his third car, a new one, each time a better car. Meanwhile, we drive an old one that is already 10 years old. We have an opportunity to buy a new car, but we don't do that. We don't do it because we have to spend money on spreading this information, on advertising. We don't do it because we have to support science. If we don't support it, who will? After all, nobody is funding this. And we understand that very well. Even some pennies will give us a chance to do at least something. Meanwhile, our neighbor brags that he has bought new iPhones for his children, whereas our children have to use old models. We feel bad and ashamed in front of our children, especially when we have such an opportunity. However, we understand that we'd rather have our children play with old iPhones. But we spend the money that would have been used to buy them new iPhones on ensuring that our neighbor gets information from those very social media onto his new iPhone of the latest model about what is happening with the climate. What if he comes to his senses? What if he joins in and helps? What if human conscience awakens in him? He looks into the eyes of his children and wants them to live. On the other hand, he does want them to live, and to live well. He takes them on vacation 2 or 3 times a year. He lies on a sunbed under a palm tree with a cocktail in his hand, enjoys the sea, and sends us photos of how nicely and beautifully he is having a vacation with his family, how his children are playing in the purest water of the ocean, at a time when we are saving our own vacation in order to spend it on preparing for yet another form, so as to inform that very neighbor of what is happening. But somehow, our neighbor doesn't care. Or he does care. On the one hand, he agrees, while on the other hand, he seems to misunderstand something. And we are puzzled. Why? Why am I so incompetent? Or maybe I don't understand something. Why can't I convey this information to my neighbor? If I cannot convey this information to my neighbor, how can I convey it to billions of other such neighbors? Whereas if they don't understand, then we won't succeed in doing anything. Then both our children and our neighbor's children will have no future, will not be able to see the sunrise, and will never understand the happiness of having children. It's not right. Therefore, we're thinking about what else we can do. We're looking for ways to convey this information to him. And at this point, with the help of our efforts and capabilities, our scientists make a breakthrough. They create something that can protect the entire world. They activate it, and that's it. The climate starts to calm down, And we realize that we have also contributed to the solution of the climate problem. We look into our children's eyes as heroes. We saved their lives, so they will have children too, and they will have a future. Tell me, doesn't this feel good? We go outside with our children, and across a lawn, our neighbor is playing with his children, and it makes us happy. It makes us happy despite the fact that our neighbor was uncooperative. But thanks to the fact that we didn't get enough sleep, didn't buy a new car, and didn't buy new iPhones for our kids, while our neighbor did it, even that makes us happy. The greatest thing that makes us happy is that our neighbor's children, our neighbor and our children, will have a future. And we see that our neighbor notices us. And he also knows from information sources that are competing to shout that everything is fine, and the climate has calmed down, the trouble has passed, everything has started to get better, and we understand that the neighbor also wants to come up and say, "Thank you" to us for confronting the climate. The neighbor comes up, we extend our hand to him, while he spits in our face and says, "Hey, you dirty sectarian. You see, the climate has improved. But you've been zombifying me all these years. You wanted me, instead of taking my kids on vacation to spend my money, to take it away from my family and give it to you, to get rich off it. Tell me, what would it be like for you? You, my friends, the ones who are now being persecuted, who are being spat at, against whom mean and vile people are now fabricating cases in some countries. Meanwhile, some of those people consider themselves spiritual. How to say, mediators between God and a human. Yet, they do vile and filthy things. In collusion with the authorities, they fabricate cases and drive Allat out. In other countries, in all kinds of yellow press, vile people slander you. Your neighbors turn away from you, considering you to be deluded sectarians. You know, someone worse than homeless people. With a homeless person, everything is at least clear. He's just an alcoholic, while you're totally crazy. You believe in some nonsense, in some climate change, and impose some creative society. Well, obviously, you work for some Schwab or Soros or someone else, while you are definitely globalists. Tell me, friends, after all that you have gone through, this persecution, this filth and misunderstanding, not only by strangers, but even in your families, you are not understood. At a time when you are doing everything to preserve the world, even for your relatives and friends, and for your children. Meanwhile, your family members do not understand you, your neighbors do not understand you, people turn away from you, spit not only on your back, but even on your face. And after you've been through all this, we invent a shield, activate it, and save the world. And afterwards, they spit on your face again. And the same thing that has been happening for years happens again. Tell me, is that fair and just towards you? Of course it's unfair. Of course it is mean and disgusting. But on the other hand, what can you expect from people? After all, these are people who kill children today, who continue to arrange and start new military conflicts, who carry out mass bombings, a large, huge number of seemingly negligible explosions. But these negligible explosions on an already dying planet, which is, excuse me, in a critical condition, while these people are constantly shelling it with a huge number, with thousands of explosions every day. Does that improve the climate or not? And they're killing innocent people at that. How does that feel? And the most interesting thing is that, in this case, if we succeed and do it on our own, we save the world. We save this unjust, inhuman world where children and innocent civilians are killed just to solve someone's private problems. We are being pitted against each other just because they want to, by inventing and creating different conditions for us. Some are fighting because of a different nationality. Others are fighting for some other ideas, which in fact have nothing to do with our lives. Tell me, so we preserve this world while it hasn't changed. Who are we after that? Do we actually have the right to preserve such a world? It's a good question, isn't it? However, if we do it all together as the entire world, as it should be, but will we be able to do it? It is also a good question. That's why we were talking even about the moral side of this issue. You know, saving the world is one thing, but whether we have the right to do it is a completely different thing. Imagine, in that case, we become those who have gone against God's will. It's true. God expressed His will through the prophets who came here and told us, you should love one another. You are all brothers. You are all near and dear people. We should have united a long time ago. Then we wouldn't have the problem we have now. But we did not listen. We lived the way we lived, the way we do now. We continued to fight, to oppose each other. We developed inhumanity, meanness, and abomination in our world. And the Cerberus hasn't purified us. It hasn't fulfilled its work because we've protected this world. In other words, we have gone against the prophets. We have gone against God's will and preserved this world filled with demonic creatures and all the filth it is overfilled with nowadays. Tell me, is it the right thing to do? Who are we after that? It's a good question. Do we have the right? And from this perspective, we don't have any moral right. While on the other hand, if we can save this world, if we have such an opportunity, do we have the right not to save it? Do we have the right to kill 1 billion children simply because we don't want our neighbor to spit on our face in front of our children, to humiliate and to insult us undeservedly, of course, undeservedly. But then his children will actually die if we don't take action. And then our children will die too. Just look how interesting this is. Now, each of us is the judge of this world. This is really so, friends. We are all the jury in this court right now. It's true. So, what verdict will we reach? Some people don't want to hear. Others think that climate disasters are man-made and that some technologies are involved. People will fight for a while now, and everything will stop. In the meantime, the Cerberus is gaining momentum, and its appetite is growing. Climatic changes are escalating, and in this case, we have no time for mythology, religion, or anything else. In this case, it's banal mathematics. It's the physics of the process. Excuse me, it is science. And it is science that must counteract. This is our world. We are given brains, conditions, and opportunities. So what now? Are we not going to use them? While some other people say, everything happens according to God's will, right? God will take care of everything. He is merciful. If there's His will for that, I will do something. Imagine what a scoundrel, a total egoist, spoiled by religion, one should be, to sit and wait for God's will, that God should descend to him because He is the center of the universe. And in order for him to do at least something, God Himself must come to him and express His will. Is that how it turns out to be, friends? In order for a person to save his children, God has to descend to him. Or, based on his prayer, in which he asked for health, glory, money, or something else, God should have mercy on his children. Is that how it happens? Or what? Then why does this pious hypocrite fail to hear what the prophets said? After all, the prophets actually said that this is God's will, and that God had sent them here so that our world would be saved, and he had sent them intentionally. Well, other people will say, it's not our business. Let those save the world who can do that. What do we have to do with this? The point is, my friend, you will die. So if you don't want to share this fate under the Cerberus's paws with everyone else, this means you should do something while you have such an opportunity. Many will say, but how? What can we do? Who will hear us? Yet, people do hear. For instance, right now you are hearing me. If you also speak, other people will hear you. And do you know that if all mass media begin to tell the truth, not to invent, not to fantasize, but to tell about all the threats as they are today, that they are 100% real, meanwhile, we can see that this mathematical model is, 100% real. So if all mass media started talking about it now, this information would be conveyed to the entire civilized world within a week at most. Tell me, would at least the civilized part of our society have enough wits to agree that the creative society is the only right option, when we would be able to provide our scientists with everything necessary, with what they need, when we would be able to truly put all science at the service, of the future of humanity. After all, scientists will have to solve something that you even have no idea about. I'll give you an example for clarity. Maybe you will understand. Imagine that we now have the year 1800, and we as humanity need to launch a nuclear reactor within 7 years. Yes, we need to understand, figure out what an atom is, how it undergoes fission, and how to create this nuclear reactor. But in 7 years, we need to get energy from this reactor, while we do not even know what it is. So, we are in exactly the same situation nowadays. What with the natural development of science would possibly come to our mind only in 200 or at least 150 years, if the situation would be different. It is necessary for us now, tomorrow, not later. That's what we have faced. And will we alone, or some group of scientists, somewhere on the outskirts of the world, in some region, since they already know that the world is changing, and since they already know that the Cerberus is real, get together and decide anything, they will actually fail to agree among themselves. They won't understand each other because they have never worked together. Therefore, for them to understand, and for science to start working, before, these institutions are destroyed, while in reality, further on, there will be more and more destruction. I'll give you a simple example. Where the Cerberus passed through, sensors and various laboratories were ruined. Where wars are going on, everything has been destroyed there too. In fact, a lot of scientists have already been forced to migrate or have already been killed by either the Cerberus or the war. And the further it goes, the more there will be such cases, which means our opportunities are diminishing. And the sooner we as humanity come to an elementary understanding that the threat is real, not mythical, and that the problem will not go away if we don't solve it, the sooner we will start doing something. However, we need not just something, but a specific action. We need a unified center and clear management, and I emphasize, the entire science should be managed by one center. Then everyone will receive the necessary task and perform it in a timely manner. And this should be monitored. Because we humans are lazy, and because, Many researchers are only called researchers and have nothing to do with science. Yet, such fellows can at least observe, at least record data from sensors or from something else, monitor certain parameters, and do simple work since they are researchers. Clearly, the more volunteers there are, the better it will be. And we know the value of volunteers like no one else. If it weren't for you, friends, our true friends, volunteers, our scientists wouldn't have such a huge amount of data, wouldn't even have at least some elementary available support, and wouldn't be able to do what they've been doing. Therefore, volunteers are extremely important, and every person is important and necessary if we really want to survive. Here, pardon me, we no longer have time for sentiments, games, and confrontations. If we fail to understand that we as humankind are one big family, and we need to unite and join into one fist in order to survive, we will simply perish. The Cerberus will erase us. In this situation, only complete idiots can doubt it. Or excuse me, people who have been brainwashed by religion to such an extent that they will sit and wait for God to send them the 20th boat, like in a joke. Just like that. However, the entire civilized community definitely needs to unite, and we should find a solution. We simply have no other choice. And we, as humanity, should at least provide a reason. If we do not provide a reason, the world will not change. Well, this reason is actually our willingness, our understanding, and our real support of each other, as well as our aspiration to survive. If we have no aspiration to survive, if we are like suicidal people, tell me, will we have a chance? A simple question. I understand that some people will say, but I do support. And at this time, a person does nothing, or recalls how he talked to someone 3 months ago, or even earlier. He doesn't even remember to whom, about the creative society. Basically, he is not against someone changing something. Tell me, is this really a support? Is this active participation? Tell me, how should you fight for the lives of your children if you are a true parent? That's the answer. You merely state that you don't mind if your child continues to live. And you don't even lift your finger. But what kind of parents are you then? A simple question. Yet, you also have to understand that people are now dying. And the saddest thing is that each of us thinks, yes, they are dying, but nothing will happen to us. But even if it happens, it will be God knows when, last of all. So I want to tell you, friends, what I want to say is what the prophets spoke about, and this is indeed true, that when the times would come, which have already started for us, the prophets said that the best ones would leave first. The Cerberus is already taking away the best of us, the best ones first. While we are now thinking, reflecting on what is happening, and hoping that we'll be the last to die, remember one thing, friends, that the prophets warned that the last to leave will be the worst of us, the most evil and unworthy. And that's when the hour of judgment will begin. And no matter how strange it may seem, right now we are living in these very times, the times of the hour of judgment. Whether we want it or not, this is true. Remember, friends, that each of us, as we already said, is a juror, and with our every decision we add weight, either to one scale or to the other. But those scales are the life and death of our children, of us, the entire humanity. And it is exactly us who are now deciding whether we will live or not. Everything is very simple. Yes, these are interesting times, and they are quite amusing in some way. I'll try to explain. What is happening nowadays, one could say that everything is messed up, but it's actually the other way around. Right now, the truth is becoming the truth, whereas lies are becoming lies. And an order begins to form, at least on the side invisible to our eye. Imagine that now. Contrary to our understanding, and the fact that we've been brainwashed by religions, people who consider themselves atheists and do not believe in God, at least in the God whom priests are trying to tell us about in religions, those atheistic people, by their merits and their actions, earn not only peace, but there are even those who by their deeds have deserved life. Why? Because even being unaware of what they are doing, they are fulfilling the will of God. They understand and know what is happening with the climate. They understand that they are human beings, and they realize that humanity must survive. So they are doing everything they can, literally everything. They get up in the morning, look into the eyes of their children, and think, what can I do today to save their lives and the lives of billions of other children? And when they go to bed, they also look into the eyes of their children and say to themselves, what have I done today? And what could I have done, but haven't, so as not to make such a mistake tomorrow? And being atheists, these people are gaining life eternal right now. This is true. Yet, there are, unfortunately, those who consider themselves highly spiritual, holy, and being even intermediaries, as they believe, they are earning extremely severe punishment for themselves, not in paradise at all, because they are opposing. They are opposing the will of God, and they are opposing the prophets, on whose teachings they established this religion and support it to this day, restraining those whom they are responsible for. And they will be punished, not only for their own ruined lives, but also for those souls which they have ruined. This is also true. I would say this is precisely the beauty of the last days, if we can say so. If the finish line didn't glimmer on the horizon, the finish line for all of our humanity. However, each of us chooses whether there will be a finish for our humanity, or pardon me, it will be the finish of our inhumanity, and we will enter a different world, that world which in reality should have already been there if we, as humanity, had fulfilled the will of God that He conveyed through our prophets. If we had at least a little conscience and honor, we would have done this. And I'll tell you, friends, that it is never too late to fulfill the will of God, you know. We shouldn't blame our ancestors or anyone else for not following the prophets and being too greedy, avid, and stupid. Those were them, and they have already been punished for their doings. So in order for us not to be punished, but to be rewarded, we, as the judges of today, must put all our energy and all our capabilities on the scale of life. Then I'm sure a lot of things can change. But again, if we do not procrastinate, if we try to get approval, misunderstand, not hear, and behave like that not very good neighbor, the outcome will be clear and undesirable for anyone. You see, it is generally difficult to discuss these topics especially when you tell the truth, because many people's consciousness refuses to accept it even now, at the time when extremely severe climatic changes are taking place in the world. And every normal, sensible person sees it, but even the consciousness of such people is trying to resist. It tries to hope that everything will pass. You know, like in the case of that stupid neighbor who was taking care of his children and enjoying life. And if it wasn't for you, friends, the outcome would have been very sad for him. However, it was a story we imagined as an example. Well, we don't have reality resolved to this day, but I hope that we'll be able to resolve it in the direction we need, in the direction of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, friends. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being humane. You know, I want to tell you another little story, even a parable. Not a story. I'll tell it very briefly, although in fact, it is long. But the essence is the following. When a guest comes to you, after 3 days, he ceases to be a guest. As they say, he's a guest for 3 days only, but then he's a burden. However, when you meet a guest as a near and dear person, regardless of how long he stays with you, you meet him as a member of your family, as the dearest person to you. Tell me, how will he meet you in his house when you come to him? As a near and dear person? Or will he look at you as a guest? A lot depends on this when we make a choice. And remember, now each of you is a judge of this world. Peace and God's love be with you.